everybody. Well, that's finger trouble for you. There was supposed to be the logo thing, but you know what that looks like already. Oh, excuse me. Give me just 1 second here. Wow, okay, don't know where that came from. Anyway, I hope you're all doing very well today, or this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, or yesterday, or whatever the hell time it is, wherever you happen to be. I've had the most remarkable weekend because I've actually managed to have a weekend off, which is unusual. So it's been very relaxing, actually. I had a stream last night with the World Anvil crowd, who currently are still streaming at the moment, as a matter of fact. And that was very enjoyable, talking about weird and wonderful historical events and things that have changed the course of history. And yeah. Then we have tonight, so been a very relaxed weekend, which is fantastic. And I must admit, I've been working on my new hobby, my tree, which is a 3D printed, well, it's a 3D pen, and you draw in 3D, and I've been making a tree. It's difficult to say I've been drawing the tree, but I really have been drawing the tree, just been drawing it in 3D. So that's been very, very interesting, very therapeutic, actually. And yeah, so that's what I've been doing, and then catching up on TV series that I haven't watched in a long time. So yeah, I must admit that I have been struggling to not work on role-playing stuff. It's been quite tricky. I've been sitting going, oh, I've got that prophecy to write, and that prophecy is quite exciting. I can't wait to write the prophecy for my solo game on Wednesdays. And then I was like, oh yeah, I've got that. Oh, and I've also got Circle of World Builders coming up at the end of the month, and that requires a huge amount of prep. But I have remained emphatic in my dedication to not doing any work. So there we are. Squishy Squid says, you look so normal in a shirt. Yeah, I know. Awful, isn't it? But to be perfectly honest with you, the regular sort of shirt thing that I wear is currently in the laundry, because I managed to catch up on that too. I mean, that's awfully mundane sort of stuff, and I'm sure you're not here for that. You are here for your questions on role-playing, and so if you have any questions on role-playing, remember to preface it with the word question in big bold text. So do that if you please. And so there the questions starting to come through. You can see a good example there of the word question in bold, and then you can go through from there. Now I'm hoping that we have a few new people in today's show. Not that I don't appreciate all of you who are normally here, but I had some people asking me questions on Facebook, and if you go to the Facebook go to the Facebook group, actually, you can then ask questions and things. And when the questions are, if they're fairly straightforward, I answer them straight away. But when they start to get interesting, usually I'm very selfish, and I say, well, please come to the show and ask them on tonight's show, because then we can all benefit from them. So hopefully someone will do that, and we'll get there. So Nick the Knife, thank you very much for that. And Ben Nicholson, you need fancy dress. Don't tempt me. I've only just put the costuming away. I really have only just put it away. So there we are. Yeah, right. So let's jump into those questions. Honourable 596 said, I'm working on a number of legendary items, and I want more unique things to make them worth their rarity. Do you have any suggestions for a sword that gets better at attacking whenever it successfully makes an attack, and a shield that gets better at defending whenever it successfully defends? Both bonuses are lost when the combat ends. Well, I think you've got some pretty interesting weaponry there. However, if they are legendary, when we think about legendary items, the first one that comes to my mind anyway is Excalibur. And what made Excalibur so interesting? Well, theoretically, it was whoever wielded it was unbeatable, except that Sir Lancelot beat King Arthur whilst he was wielding Excalibur. And Excalibur was broken, even though it could not be broken, because Excalibur represented hope, supposedly. Anyway, that's one of the interpretations of Excalibur. So I always like, if you're making legendary items, they need to be bound to legend. So yes, you have the mechanical. You have the sword is going to be doing this and it's going to be doing that. That's absolutely fine. But what culture sees this as being legendary? And who was the wielder that made it legendary in the first place? So the One Ring is only legendary because of its ancient history, because of its original intention, which was to corrupt man and elf and dwarf by good old Sauron. So I think it's looking at what makes things legendary are the legends that have been built up around them, and then making sure that when PCs see that sword, it's is that the sword of the legendary Brian? That's Brian's sword, that is. That's legendary. Well known for doing X, Y, and Z. So you have to build it up. You have to make the legend work. Otherwise, it's really just a mechanical MacGuffin that the players have. So, yeah, in terms of mechanics, keep track of whenever they do whatever it is that they do. But it's about building up that legend around them. And, of course, visual representation for the players so the players can figure it out so they don't have to meta. Could work quite well as well. I'll never forget, I had a demon... it was a blade, a sword, that had a demon trapped within it. And I think I've spoken about this before, actually. And every time the player would swing the sword, they would have to make a Constitution saving throw. And if they succeeded, when they hit with this sword, they would drain life from the victim over to themselves. But they would never drain the full amount of damage. They would always drain just a little bit. Because what was actually happening was the sword was also draining part of that essence as well. And the demon trapped inside was using that power effectively to grow stronger until eventually they could break out. On the other hand, every now and again, the player would swing the weapon and fail their Constitution saving throw, in which case whatever damage they dealt to the target, they themselves also lost. Now, they assumed that was just a sort of a punishment. The sword was absorbing the damage that they had lost as well, because the sword was not designed as a cursed item or as a legend, as a magical item of great power and that sort of thing. It was just a bladed weapon that had trapped a demon, and this was the outcome of that. So there we are. Anyway, also had a dagger that was a fish. And if you drew it incorrectly, it would flop around like a fish. You had to keep it in a rolled piece of newspaper. But it's, anyway. All right. Okay, so that was that. Next question I see is Grizzle says, my DM mentioned that the sword my character forged has potential to become a legendary item. I'm curious as to how this would happen and how you would go about doing such a thing in one of your own campaigns. Well, I've had a lot of players who have made either a suit of armor or something particularly legendary, and it is, again, through the actions. It's through actions and propaganda. Let's be perfectly honest with it. That's the formation of a legend. So the blade, when it is used to slay the king, if your player says, and thus the fang of doom has struck again, the sword has no intention of being the Fang of Doom. It probably wants to be called Priscilla, but nonetheless, if the character is mentioning it every time something is happening and it's being mentioned to NPCs, the legend will start to grow. That's how legends work. And as the GM, if that was something that I knew that you wanted to do, I would say, all right, well, the sword is fairly well known, and in my world anyway, I use Terry Pratchett's mechanic. In my world, the gods have power because people give them power. And so the sword would start to have power because the people started to believe in Bringer of Doom, Fang Blade, whatever the hell it's called. They start to believe in it, so the sword does start to actually get stronger. But the sword needs to be proven. So that's what I would add, is that blade needs to be taken to the greatest arena in the world. And that's a quest, obviously, to go and find the greatest arena in the world. And then to be used to slay the 12-headed dragon of Gelgathong, because let's use Star Trek names. And, so it's really about making it legendary. And what will make it legendary is if it is used in the arena to fight the last 7-headed dragon and to slay it. And there you go. So at that point, then it would be a question of, okay, well, it slew a 7-headed dragon. So I would say that the sword then has the ability to, on command of the wielder, use one of the 7 breath weapons that that particular dragon would have had if we're going in 5th edition. I mean, that's stuff off the top of my head, but it's got to be a journey. It's got to be a story, obviously. I mean, that's what this channel is all about, but that's where it's got to go, I think, anyway. Squishy Squid says, in my next adventure, 40k, that's cool. Are you using old system or new system? My players are supposed to explore an abandoned mine and find a well-hidden branch leading into a derelict alien Xeno facility. How can I make that search interesting? Okay, well, it's a very good question. How do you make something that is potentially just roll the dice, you find the secret entrance? How do you make it interesting? So, well, it's very good. Now, when you look at your party, if you've got people, players particularly, who like a good mystery, who like a good riddle, something along those lines, you then make the discovery of this secondary mine shaft. Let me just refresh my memory. There we go. On your secondary mine shaft, you make that part of an ancient map that refers to this or that, or, you know, there's this extra entrance, and they need to figure that out. So place is a riddle. If your players prefer more combat, then I would have that area quite heavily defended by worshippers of the Xenos, perhaps. So it's not the actual Xenos yet, because you want to hold that back for when they walk through that door and they suddenly realize, hang on a moment, we are surrounded by the alien and the heretic. So I would judge it based on what your players you like, and then go from there. I mean, that's standard practice. How to make it more interesting, though, is, of course, the stakes have to be raised. So how do you make it more dangerous? There's two options that immediately spring to my mind anyway. Is one, they're being chased by somebody who has potential to actually seal it up before they get there, so they're racing to get there in time, or their only exit has been sealed and they have no way out and they're running out of air. So there's a pressure on them to act. So that's what the stake is. So they have to find it, type of thing. So I would go with either of those two. And then depending on how much time you want to devote on it, there could be combined checks to climb cliffs, to move rock from a collapsed shaft, to rebuilding an elevator that will take them up 50 meters and not drop them into the chasm of death, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's my idea. Dan Sturdevant says, how concerned should I be about removing a player's agency while they are struck with fear to advance the story? Oh, this is a good one, Dan, because it's a tricky one. If the rulebook has a mechanical expression of fear, I think for the traditioners, you have to move as far away as possible from the target that you are fearful of. So that's what I mean by a mechanical expression. If it has some kind of mechanical expression, then you could, in a way, say, well, your character flees down this corridor, which is taking away agency from the player, but it's still within the guidelines of the rules. If the player is terrified and your rules say, well, the player can't act, you can't then really say you turn and flee down a passageway. What you can do, however, and this is subtle and it's tricky, but I believe it's the right way to go, have that player say, oh, you're terrified of this beast. And the player goes, okay, cool, I'm terrified of the beast. What do I have to do mechanically? Well, you just stand there. Okay, great. Next round, the player is still terrified of this beast, right? So you then say, okay, well, you see a corridor down to your left, and that's open, but this beast is still in front of you. And you've now noticed, only you have noticed, that it's actually, the fangs are coated in poison. And this beast will most likely kill whomever it bites. And if that doesn't get them to suggest to the party to leave, you then say to them the next round, you think it's actually healing itself every time it takes damage. You don't think that you think this thing is getting stronger the more you hit it. You really think you're actually not sure you can actually defeat this beast. So in other words, what you are doing is you are playing on the actual fear that the character would be going through. Think about when you are terrified, when you are absolutely afraid. If you get to that state, and if you don't, you're very lucky. But when you are absolutely terrified of something, it becomes the most powerful thing in your area. It can do anything, and logic dribbles out the window and crawls away as fast as it can. By that I mean, I have an absolute fundamental paranoia. It's not even paranoia because I know they're trying to kill me. I have a fundamental phobia of snakes. Absolute fundamental terror of snakes. And I think people who've watched this channel for a long time will know this. If I see a snake in my proximity, I don't care what is happening around me. That creature knows I'm here. That creature knows it cannot be killed. And I know that whatever I do is futile. It will get to me, and it will bite me, and I will die. And I've often said to people that if I ever got bitten by a snake, it doesn't matter whether the snake was poisonous or not. I would still die because the fear is so great. So when playing fear on your PCs, we can't make each other fearful. You really shouldn't make your fellow players fearful of you because you're playing a game. But you can manipulate the system so that the system seems to be absolutely impossible to overcome. That, to me, is the real embodiment of the fear effect within a role-playing system. So I would drive it like that if I were you. That's what I would do. So there we go. Right, and just by the way, and this is not a joke whatsoever, if you ever want to end any kind of relationship that you have with me, just send me a picture of a snake, and please do not even test it. If you go onto Discord and you post a picture of the snake, the goblins have an instruction to ban you for life. It is that level of hatred. It really is. And there's no reason for it. I've never been bitten. I'm still alive, obviously. Anyway, okay. So, White Tiger's next question that's popped in says, we are doing My Fantasy World 3,000 years in the future, and any good ways to do a Star Trekian exploration in 5th edition? To my knowledge, there isn't a Star Trek 5th edition game, as far as I know. However, there is a Star Wars 5th edition game which is free to download. The Star Wars fans made it, so that would I think they had a ship thing coming out, or they were going to release a ship section, so that would allow you to then have the sciencey type of stuff going on. But to be perfectly honest with you, drop 5th edition for that and get the D20 Modern and D20 Future rules, because those really are perfect Star Trek rules. I still maintain it's one of the best sci-fi role-playing games that was ever released. And 3.5 is so close to 5th edition, you really won't tell the difference. And you can transpose 5th edition stuff, if you like advantage and disadvantage. You could put that into 3.5 without losing as much as breath as needed to say we're using advantage and disadvantage. So you really could do that. Okay. Right. Is there another question from Honourable? You've got so many questions. It's lovely. The Battle Axe Blight Spore has a feature that causes its victim or the user, by eating a special mushroom on the hilt, to experience either possibly prophetic visions or be driven into a bloodthirsty rage. The rage is just a matter of inflicting the enemy's a bound spell on the victim with a different save. But how would you handle the possibly prophetic visions? Prophecy, prophetic visions, all those kinds of wonderful things. I would suggest you watch my Wednesday night show after the one-on-one. So I do a one-on-one RP role-playing game with a lovely guy named Brian. He's playing a tabaxi who's about to discover he is the center of I think it was 1,400-year-old prophecy. I haven't written that prophecy yet. I was supposed to do it this week. Well, I wanted to do it this weekend, but then I took a weekend off. So I will be writing that on Wednesday night, and that is a complete prophecy predicting the future actions of the character, but at the same time not predicting the future actions of the playing character, because we have no idea what he's going to do. So there are lots of secret tricks that you can use when creating a prophecy that will feel as if you had planned this entire thing, and even though the player chose everything completely on their own, they still ended up going down your path, and you will appear to be some kind of prophetic god. Meanwhile, you're actually just using some psychological tricks. So there's lots of them, and I'll go through them. I have done a video, I think, called Dreaming. Although you guys might be interested to know, he said, looking at his desktop, frantically wondering, we have started the cataloging of the GM videos on how to be a great game master into a database. So very soonish, at some point in the near future, you will be able to go to the website and type in Prophecies, probably, and it will bring up all of the videos that talk about prophecy, hopefully. Links to those videos, and they don't bring up timestamps specifically because I really don't have that much time, but they will at least bring up the video that's linked to it. So that process has begun. It takes quite a long time to do it the way that the web goblin wants me to do it, but it's fine. We will get there. So that process has begun indeed. Okay, next question. It just rolled off the screen. This is from Jimmy James. Covering conditions. How would you run charmed characters? More than once when a PC gets charmed and sees the enemy as a friend, they just sit the combat out, suddenly becoming neutral. Absolutely. You are absolutely correct. And hello, World Anvil! Light up the forge! You have all arrived just in time as we're jumping straight into questions. Your questions about role-playing and storytelling and the like. Okay, so how do we handle a charmed player who does not want to play out the way they are charmed? It's a very good question. It's a very good question. And again, newer players won't know about this. Older players, unless they're good role players, older players will try and slick and slide their way out of it by doing less attack. They'll be using every power they have to kill the monster, but the moment the monster charms them, they turn around and they go, oh yeah, no, okay, my character decides they're going to use their dagger to attack from range. Yeah, blindfolded. Why? If this is the state, this is the state. You attack full force. So what I generally do, if I have players who are going, oh no, I'm not going to... It's like, all right, give me your character sheet. I will play your character if you don't want to play your character. So your choice. Your choice. Let them try and weasel out of it. Let them try and think their way out of it by, oh, if I use this power, I know they're immune to that. Well, yes. Okay, sure. You use that power. Your immunity doesn't work. You need to sometimes, and I think, I'm getting, as I get older, I'm getting far more militant in terms of how I handle people trying to shirk their duty in terms of following the rules. It's like, well, if the rule says this and you want to play by the rules, then that's what you should be doing. So with the charm, as with fear, where you are trying to portray and show what's going on, I think with charm it really is a case of saying your friend is being attacked and killed. What are you going to do about it? And when they say, oh, I'm doing a half-hearted, then you say, you're not a very good friend, are you? Again, it's about making them realize that they are missing the plot, missing the point, I think. All right, something that's very important to bear in mind, folks, because we've got quite a lot of people in chat now. And as you can see, I've got both YouTube and Twitch running, is if I miss your question, please ask it again. Don't feel as if you are being spammed, or if you are spamming, just ask it again. It's absolutely fine. Cold Moon 23 says, I started writing a campaign for Vampire the Masquerade, and I had an idea. Okay, I made a decision that I will make Prince Malkavian instead of Ventru or Thrordor, as usual. But why is he in the seat of power? Well, that's why, because he somehow managed to fool everyone during his vampire life that he's actually a Ventru. So my question is, do you think that that's something that is actually plausible? I will raise my hand immediately and say the only time I've ever played Vampire the Masquerade, I wanted to come from the clan of Set, which I don't think even exists in the current version of Vampire the Masquerade. They wrote them out. I thought they were the coolest of the vampires, but anyway, so I'm not completely convinced that I could tell you the difference between a Ventru and a Triador. I seem to remember the Triadors being, well, obviously Spanish-inspired romanticists, whereas the Ventru, I'm not entirely sure. And Malkavians are the sneaky ones, and the Nosferatu eat everybody else. I think, anyway, that's not the point. And it doesn't matter. The question I have to ask you is, how would you, as a Malkavian, insinuate your way into this position? Tell me that story. Don't ask me, is it believable or not? Tell me the story of how it happened. So yesterday was a wonderful example of being able to answer this question, and it's something that I have as a not a bugbear, but it's a thing. I hear lots of people saying, oh, that's incongruous. That doesn't make sense. How could that have possibly happened? And you go, do you know the weird and wonderful stuff that happens in our world on a daily basis because someone does something stupid? Imagine if this Malkavian had somehow convinced some old dowager of the Ventru that he was, in actual fact, a long-lost cousin from a split branch that got entombed by the Knights Templar 500 years ago, 1,100 years ago, and has now emerged. And yes, he has allied with the Malkavians because they were the ones who found him, but at his heart he's Ventru, and she should give him his vote at the next meeting. But the next Ventru he finds, he says, if you do not give me your vote at the next meeting, I will rip your unbeating heart out, and here's the muscle to prove it. So there's a lot of manipulation that can go on in the background, but all it takes is one of them to break and give the vote, and the rest will go, ha, the dowager is voting for him, he threatened me, I wasn't going to vote for him, but if he's voting, if they're voting, and it's a kaleidoscope and it collapses. It's very, very easy when you start looking at it from that perspective. So you tell the story of how it happened. You don't question how it could happen. These things happen. Maybe the dowager liked the color of his hair in the moonlight. Stranger things have finish the sentence. Stranger things have happened. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Anyway. Okay, so there we go. I hope that helped. I hope that works for you. Walter S. Lima says, through the magic of the cleric, the goddess presaged a ritual that the group wants to prevent. But in magic, it says it will happen anyway. How to reward in this plot, even if they can't win. Through the magic of the cleric, the goddess presaged a ritual that the group wants to prevent. But in magic, it says it will happen anyway. How to reward? Well, firstly, depending on what system you're using, most role-playing systems say that there is always options for you to break it. So yes, there is a magic spell that's going to get cast, and the goddess casts the spell. And the player characters are desperately trying to stop it. And you don't want it to happen? Another god stops it from happening. And then says to the players, oi, I helped you, now you're going to help me. Let's go and sort out some cultists down in the south. So I wouldn't ever be constrained by the rules say. You are the ultimate power. So if you don't want it to happen, then don't let it happen. If you want it to happen, then it's going to happen one way or another anyway, because you have ultimate power. So if it happens and the players were trying to stop it and they failed to stop it, have another god coming in and saying, I saw what you were trying to do there and you failed. But I believe your hearts were in the right place, and I want to see you succeed. The next step in this individual's plan is X, and we're going to stop that. I'm not entirely sure how, because I can't really interfere, but I can say that there's a cache of legendary weapons known as the Sword of Brian in that temple over there, and that might help you. So, intervention is absolutely fine. Prophecy is fine. You have so many tools at your disposal. Oftentimes we get stuck going, well, that's what the rules say, and that's what the outcome is. That's what has been triggered, and so it's done. Now what? You can trigger more stuff to happen. That will not unwrite, but that will adjust the outcome to being back to where you want it to go. Nick the Knife says, did they bring back, to the best of your knowledge, spelljamming space travel after 2nd edition? I think they did it in 3. I could be mistaken because I was in a conversation the other day with somebody. I want to say it was Dave Friant, and they were postulating on what the next setting coming out would be. It was before they announced Theros, the Theros book. And I think they were saying they've done Spelljammer for all of the editions, so they should do it then for the next one. So I suspect it might be coming out for the edition. I mean, certainly now they've got a whole lot of rules that they could use to handle all of that type of stuff. So there you are. Ryan the Wolf says, I'm going to be doing my first DM session 0 soon with longtime friends. That's fantastic. The group's old DM will be a player this time, and he tends to metagame. If there is a way to curb... Oh, is there a way to curb or control the metagaming? Yes. Firstly, before you even start, in your session 0, you tell everybody, listen, folks, do we want metagaming or don't we want metagaming? Get the lay of the land, first of all, and if they say we don't want metagaming, then you say, okay, that's fine, but I'm going to call you out on it whenever you do it, and then you can't do it. What that means is, when he starts metagaming, or she starts metagaming, or they start metagaming, whoever it is that's doing it, the moment they start metagaming, you have now given yourself the authority and your players a cooperative agreement that you can call them out. You can say, metagaming, you can't do that. It's simple, it's painless, it's emotionless, and it's no longer pointed at specifically an individual, it's at everybody. But you have to make sure, of course, that you are applying it to everybody, so you must make sure that if someone else is metagaming, you literally jump on them and say metagaming, metagaming, metagaming. And it's as simple as that. And don't then say to them, okay, listen, it's metagaming, you can't do that. It's metagaming, explain to me how your character might know that. And what that hopefully will get them to do is say, well, my character's got pretty good history. Or could I have read a book once in a library? I don't know. What's your character? Oh, you're a barbarian and you've got animal totems? No, you didn't read that in a library once. At best, you burnt the library down and ransacked the monks. So no. A monk screamed it out as you were barbarianing them? No. Metagaming. Sorry, that's not. So that is definitely a way to curb metagaming straight up front, is just to say, listen, no metagaming here, folks, and if I think you're metagaming, I'm going to call you out on it. We will not stop the game to debate whether it's metagaming or not, because we're just stopping the game, and that's boring. I will say metagaming, how does your character know that information? If you cannot tell me in 5 seconds how the character knows that information, it's done, you can't do it. Just move on and step away. Okay, there we are. Right, so that would be that. As I said, when I first started this channel, I was very polite and very kind, and it's like, no, we're done. It's just done. It's done. We've got so many things nowadays. You know, all the modern day technology has changed things so much since they first started role playing. All this fancy nonsense. Anyway, so there we are. Okay, Tom Smith says, I had the pleasure of playing at your table during the Horde convention in London 2019. I remember you doing a crazy good gurgling voice for the merfolk. How did you do that? Just can't figure it out. The merfolk, yes. Let me just have a sip here. You have put me on the spot now. You've got a channel, you're in a murloc. Good heavens. It's very difficult. You have to make your lips very loose and you have to fill your mouth with spit. Then you almost have to imagine that you're gargling at the back of your throat. So you throw your voice back to the back of your throat. Then if your mouth is filled with slime, it allows you to then almost sound like you're gurgling. If at the same time that you are speaking, you wobble your voice, is the best way I can describe it. You literally pump air in pressure. You change your pressure as you're going. It creates a sort of wobbling sound, and if it is deep down, then it starts to sound more guttural and then more spit. And oh my God, you just fill your mouth with spit and slobber everywhere. I mean, that's the bottom line of it. But as I used to say to my students when I used to do TV and radio presenting, play with your voice and see what you can achieve. See what you can achieve. I was always inspired by the sound of Merman from He-Man and the Master of the Universe. And I wanted to try and imitate that and figure out how to get that sound going. So anyway, there you are. That was my desperate attempt to recreate a voice. I'm not even sure I can remember that. Lance Pickett says, when using commonly overlooked mythologies, so Native American, Polynesian, yeah, I hate overlooking that particular one, what dangers or pitfalls should one be watching out for when using commonly overlooked mythologies? Look, mythology, well, okay. Steal from everywhere and then adapt it to make it your own. That's the bottom line. So direct links are problematic. Something that I have learned as well, and this is from using the Aztec gods a lot. Quetzalcoatl is difficult for a lot of people to say. And this is something else that I have learned as well. A lot of people say my dwarvish names are impossible to pronounce. And I go, but Loch Moch Hardach, what's wrong with that? It's basically Klingon. For me, I can make the and the growls and all of that sort of thing because I have had training learning Dutch in South Africa, or Afrikaans anyway, where there's lots of ghs and guttural sounds. So for me, it's not difficult. But for a lot of my users of my maps and the adventures and things that I write, they go, Loch, da. How do you even pronounce A-G-H? And I'm like, that's ach, clearly. Ach, it's ach. They're like, that sounds like arg. I'm like, well, okay. So the biggest thing is when you're adapting these mythologies is to adapt stuff that your audience that you are working with, so that might be your players, that might be your readers, it might whoever is going to be consuming your material, is something that they can pronounce. So Klingon is a very good example where it became a cult-like space because in the West it was so oddly written that we had no idea how to pronounce it. There's capitals in the middle of words, and there's commas and apostrophes, and it's really, 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 really difficult if you don't even have a concept of where to begin. And for some people, it's just too much. And I think that's for the majority of people. It's like, oh, yeah. Dag my check. Or whatever, right? For the Klingon phrase, dag my check, which means beam me up. And dag my check. It's like, it doesn't have nearly as much impact, right? Anyway, so yes, that would be my biggest advice, is what you're adapting is make sure that you're not creating something that's very, very intelligent and very smart and very cunning, but is actually unusable by the people it's meant to be impressing. The Tenshi Tobias, I always get confused on that one. I played the same character in the same game for just over 3 years, spanning 50 plus sessions of 10 plus hours. How do you get past this character to continue to evolve? Wait, so hang on a moment. Let me go back to that one. So I played the same character in the same game for just over 3 years, spanning 50 sessions of 10 plus hours. So 500 hours you played the same character. How do you get past this character to continue to evolve? Well, all right. Firstly, I think that's brilliant. I think that's wonderful. Secondly, how do you get past it? Draw a line in the sand. Draw a line in the sand and do what I did, actually, where I said to someone, it doesn't matter, I hate playing hobbits, and I hate playing barbarians and warlocks and rogues and things, and so people gave me rogue hobbits to play to try and see if I could find something that I liked about them. I didn't really find anything that I liked about them because my attitudes were not based on the mechanics. I don't care about the mechanics. It's about the character. Sorry. Anyway, point is, that character must stay there because if you take that character out of that place, you're undoing all of that, in my opinion. And I hold that to be absolutely true. Good example is Picard, the new Star Trek TV series. The Captain Picard we all remember was the Captain Picard of the 80s and the 90s and into the early noughties. This is not the same Captain Picard, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that it's not the actor, it's not the writing of the character. The universe is not the same. And as a result of that, it doesn't sit right. And my fond memories of Picard will not be from the TV series Picard, but will be from the shows and that sort of thing. So I think for the sake of your character, time to make a new one. And don't make the exact opposite. That's crazy. Don't make a copy of this one, of course. That's entirely true as well. But look at this one and say, okay, this is one of the best. These were the best features that I liked about that character. Let me do something that's now very, very different about something else that you admire. So that would be the approach that I take. Tom Smith, Shiba Dog shaking his hips saying thank you. Well, Tom Smith, thank you for that, and thank you to Shiba Dog. I'm not entirely convinced I understand that reference, but Tom Smith, thank you nonetheless. All donations are greatly appreciated. So there we are. Actually, I should probably triple check that there isn't a question linked to that statement, because the restream doesn't show me that. It just says this is what's happened. So just give me a second here, folks, because I don't want to disenfranchise anybody. Whilst that's busy loading up, Calbar05 says, planning ship heavy games. How should handle ship crew taking damage being killed from cannons? As not too sure how to handle it. Well, Kelbar05, well, when we're talking ship combat, not sure what system you're going to be using for that naval combat, but I wrote a book recently released, as a matter of fact, called A Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns, which is all about sailing ships and handling massive ship battles and crew battles. And this is the deck of cards that you can now order from DriveThru. These are just the orders that can be given to ship's crew during those battles. And, okay, this is not just for ships. This is for ships. This is for ports. This is for admirals who are in control of fleets and things. So if you're running 5th edition, you might want to pick up a copy of A Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns. You can get that off of our website, www.greatgamemaster.com, because it really will answer every question you could have on running a nautical campaign with regards to crew and that sort of thing. It utilizes the base idea of 5th edition, but then completely rewrites everything else that has to do with ship combat. So have a look at that if you like. It's so far we haven't got a single person saying that it was a waste of their money giving us a review so far, and we've had 1,000 backers pick it up, and it's being sold daily, so check it out. Grizzle says, DM mentioned a possible crossover between the different campaigns in his world. I have a quiet character. How can I try not be left out with two different groups of unknown size interacting with my own? How can I try not be left out? Oh, yeah. So, bottom line is quiet characters, and that's why. There's a video coming out next week, but it's not a new video. It's a reworking of an older video on how to make your character likable, and that does tie very much into how do you work this. So you have a quiet character, that's fine. Just because your character doesn't say anything doesn't mean that your character is not going to be in any shape or form not interacting. If the parties arrive and your character sets up camp and starts to hand drinks out and basically takes actions to include themselves in the parties that they are meeting, they don't have to say anything. But literally, unless they are absolutely silent and don't want to help or interact with everybody, if that's the case, the problem is the character build in the first place, because you've built a solo character, which is absolutely fine if you're playing in a solo game. But if you're playing in a group game and your character doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't interact with anyone, doesn't try and make anyone feel at home, your character, that's the problem right there. It doesn't matter how many groups are coming in and coming over it. So there we are. Game Master's Vault says it's a great book. I've read it cover to cover about 20 times. Yes, because he's the freaking editor of the book. So nice to have you with us, Game Master's Vault. Right. Student saying, I love how I can hear all the different voices Guy uses as I read his book. Yes, as long as they stay there when you are reading the book and they don't start following you around when you are not reading the book. That is the important differentiator. Namine91. Namini. I must admit, having gone to Japan, the way I try and pronounce words and things now are very, very different. Namini91 says, do you have any plans to translate your books into Italian? I don't have any plans, but having said that, Complete Guide to Epic Campaigns, which is the story-focused one, that has been translated into Portuguese by the Troubadours from Brazil, which they had a great time with. I've now got 2 people, and I haven't read the email because it came in this weekend and I was theoretically not working. I've got 2 people working on a French translation of the book. So what I do, and this is open to anybody who's serious about this, by the way, is what we do is we say, if you want to translate any of the books into a language of your choice, I will work with you in terms of trying to run a GoFundMe or an Indiegogo or a little Kickstarter to raise money for translation and resetting purposes. So what the guys in Brazil did was they ran a Brazil-based Kickstarter, specifically for Brazil, and they raised up enough money to basically pay for themselves to hire a graphic designer. They got all of the files from us, and they then translated it all into Portuguese so that it's the final PDF. And then you can buy that off our website. And the share that we have is that they got to keep all of the Kickstarter money that they raised, and then whatever gets sold on our website is for us to keep. So there's, but that's just one option. So there's many options. So if you happen to be Italian, then there you go. I might actually, since you're talking about Italy, I recently did the Brancalonia play setting, which is they're an Italian-based company. So I might. It's been interesting to see the translation requests that have come through. So there you are. Long and short of it, that's how we work. Scrato asks, how do you motivate your players to be creative on their own when they become used to the GM, that the GM is mainly their storyteller? Okay, well, Scrato, firstly, I would suggest watching some videos on my YouTube channel where you will learn that I am a firm believer that as the GM, you are not actually the storyteller. You are the performer of the world, absolutely, but primarily you are there simply to act as a trigger and an event adjudicator and coordinator, if you like. You're more of an event coordinator. Wow, I never thought of it like that, actually, but that's pretty much what it is. So from a storytelling perspective, the players have to engage and the players have to move forward. And again, it sounds to me like this is something that has already been entrenched, which certainly does happen. And so a good, open, honest discussion with the guys before you start playing might do the trick. It's literally a case of sitting down and saying, hey, listen, I asked this question the other day on a YouTube channel. How do we all become storytellers rather than just the DM being a storyteller? And is that something that you want? So I used to have players who would sit at my table and they're like, no, we're just here for the story. And we're going to create characters so we can interact with the story. Tell us the story. We want to know what the story is. And it's like, but that's not what the story is. You guys make the story. I just trigger stuff. That's all that happens and give consequences. That's it. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting one, but oftentimes just a frank conversation is going to work. It's going to be amazing how that works out for you. Silver Shine says, I'm creating a universe intending to create a role-play system aimed to incorporate the chat in sessions for streaming. Any recommendation in what system should I study to create that system? I'm creating a universe intending to create a role-playing system aimed to incorporate the chat in sessions for streaming. Silvershine, explain more, please. Explain more what you mean there. So elaborate. So are you trying to find a system to roleplay with that will incorporate chat? I'm not sure. You just expand a little bit more. I'm not sure I'm smart enough to read that, or I've read it incorrectly and I'm stuck there. Tengwian has a two-part, 1 and 2. Anyway, I have a campaign nearing its end, the last IT day before the showdown is about to start, and I have yet to come up with a way to get the PCs to the finale's cave. They have been there once before, but in order to keep 3 dozens of priests from the city out, I made the only known entrance seal with only a very unreliable option to open it. I have seeded another possible entrance, but that one they also reported. Now I feel obliged to have some clerics follow them down into the caves beneath the Amsterdam-Venice-style town, but I don't want them to be present in the final battle. The big bad won't have more than maybe 2 minions who should be completely obliterated by a single priest. How should I go about this? Wow. Okay, so let's unpack this step by step. Firstly, yes, don't you hate it when you paint yourself into a corner? So, you've decided your campaign is going to come to an end for whatever reason, and there are many reasons why a campaign would come to an end. Your entrance that was sealed and subsequently, they can't go through it. What if the priests were undigging that? What if the priests were undigging that and the players learned about that, and they also learned that the priests are not particularly vigilant on the dig site, and so the PCs could sneak in that way whilst the priesthood is unaware of what's going on. So that could be an option, that they literally sneak in whilst the priesthood is digging stuff. So think of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where here's this giant Nazi digging site, and Indiana Jones and his group happily sneak in and do a whole bunch of stuff and sneak out virtually undetected. So that would be certainly a way to do it. How to get rid of the priesthood inside of this space? Quite frankly, there could be very easy a very easy mechanism by which you look at the players and their abilities and their character abilities in terms of, okay, well, that one can fly, that one can teleport, this one can do that. Okay, great. We will then have a certain series of traps and pitfalls that only the PCs can get across, and the priests stand on the other side saying, we will revenge you, just not now because we're not needed for the finale. And what that does is not only do you then get your grand finale with the big bad endgame, but also if your players go, that was such a cool campaign, can't we carry on? Well, now the head of the evil priesthood has a whole bunch of reasons for hating the PCs, and you've set up an antagonism which would then possibly make sense for it to flow into the next campaign. But anyway, the point of the matter is that you don't want to force it. You do have a limited amount of time. So you also don't want to MacGuffin it. You don't want it to feel like, oh, I needed you to get in there. The unreliable way of getting in, it sounds very unreliable. So unless you can somehow change that, and there is a way, but it's not a nice way. The players could have a dream, a vision at night of them taking the unreliable way and all of them dying, or them sneaking in through the priesthood excavation and succeed. I mean, yeah, you can play it how you like, but yeah, I think it would be something along those lines. Not a great answer, I'm sorry. Okay, so the Dungeon Tomb says, do you have your dragons in 5th edition able to cast spells? And if so, how do you use them? I have lots of different types of dragons in my games. I have smart dragons that are intelligent and that can cast all kinds of magic. I have dragon magic in my campaigns, which is the old magic. And effectively what dragon magic is if a dragon casts fireball at you, fireball cast at level 15 or whatever is appropriate for that particular dragon. So that would be 15d6 damage, and then times it by 10. because it's dragon magic, and dragons are super powerful, and they're not just going to be some piddly little lizard that lives under a rock somewhere or hides in a dank cave. If you are going to fight the truly ancient dragons, you will be fighting ancient dragon magic, which is truly terrifying. I have never subscribed to the idea that there is a reason for it to be limited. So there you are. Okay. We are almost over time, but we might go a little bit longer tonight because I'm having fun. Okay, let's see. Honorable 596, lots of questions. Okay, I might have to start answering other people's questions to give them an opportunity, but that's okay. What do you think of a sentient weapon who constantly whispers thoughts of forgiveness, mercy, and redemption to its wielders? I think that's great, as long as it doesn't become too irritating. I would use it for comedic effect. So have it start whispering, or you hear these whispers, give mercy, give mercy, give mercy. And then it could possibly be snarky at some point. It's like, wow, gee, lots of mercy there. You're a real hero. Wow. Yep. Are you proud? Do you make your mother proud? That sort of thing. So, yeah, there we go. That's definitely, you can do it. Don't overdo it, because otherwise it just becomes boring and the player's going to dismiss it. And then use it as a resource. So have it whisper. If this one actually knows something about the escape, if you save their life, show them mercy, that might give you that information, so you can use it as a guiding tool as well. That works quite well. Pitterbread says, how can I GM a labyrinth where one player is cursed to not be able to communicate, but they can see the right path and all the traps? Concerned about tempting metagame too much. Well, if they can't speak, you say. They can't speak. Let me just find that question again. Where the hell has it gone? A labyrinth where one player is cursed to not be able to keep. They can't communicate. That's important. But they can see the right path and all the traps. Concerned about tempting metagame too much. Okay, so the problem that you face is that humans are far more ingenious than we give ourselves credit for sometimes, and sometimes they're not. If your player knows what they're doing, even if they can't communicate is the key word there. So that means they cannot share the information whatsoever. So there is no communication going on. They can't moan, groan, grunt, nudge, wink, blink. They cannot communicate anything. Body language is a form of communication. Grunting is a form of communication. We know this, right? However, it becomes very boring if the player can, oh, you're cursed. You can do nothing. Right? It's just frustrating. Oh, you have the knowledge, but you can do nothing. So I would suggest that you create a small code that moan means left, cough means right. Only the player who cannot communicate knows this. So they can go, But the players must then figure out, oh, wait, when he did that sound, remember when we went right and we died? We should probably go left. It changes your curse a little bit, but it makes it so much more fun, because now the player has to communicate in one sense, right? But the players are now solving a riddle rather than just being frustrated that he knows where we should be going and he can't tell us, blah, blah, blah. So you make it more entertaining. That would be my immediate suggestion. Brian Tat GK says, do you like your full-time job? Yes, my full-time job is fantastic. As a matter of fact, propped up and supported by all of you wonderful folk watching this channel. And hopefully, subscribing to Twitch or buying books and that sort of thing. So, yes, I do. I really do. I saw that Silver Shine responded. I don't speak English so well, so maybe it's my fault. Not at all. Your English seems to be absolutely fine. And I appreciate you asking the question in English as opposed to your home language. So there we go. I want to create a role-playing system to include the chat on the games and not having them as only an audience. I want references or information or whatever I can have to help me get that goal. Thanks. And sorry. No, absolutely fine. If you could figure out that system, I would love to use it myself. We're constantly going, how do we get more out of the people watching? I have tried to have moderators who choose answers. We are going to be using straw polls in the Circle of World Builders event that will be happening at the end of the month. So I have tried, and there are certain triggers and things that you can do, but what you're ultimately talking about is a much more integral kind of system. But it only works if the people watching also know the rules and can be triggered by you as the runner and the organizer of this entire system in a way that isn't too invasive and difficult. So it's complicated. To be honest, I haven't yet found a system that would work. But if you join our Discord, discord.gg/greatgm, I'm sure you'll find people there who are willing to help. And if you do find something, please let me know, because I'd love to use it myself. Okay. All right. So we are basically at the end of our time. I see there's still lots of questions coming through, which is great, which is wonderful. And if I don't get to answer them, I will ask you to come back again next week, basically, so we can work through them. I need to share with you, if you don't know, I see a lot of new names here, so I think it might be worth it. This Circle of World Builders, this event that's going to be happening, and I see, Lance, you speaking to me in Afrikaans. Do you realize my Afrikaans teacher, when I graduated from high school, she came up to me, Mevrouw Stein, Mrs. Stein. She came up to me and she said, listen, would you please never, ever speak Afrikaans in public or in private ever again? Because what you do to that language is absolutely atrocious. And I've had people from Japan saying, listen, just stop trying. Just stop trying. No. Anyway, all right. So, Circle of World Builders. The Circle of World Builders is happening at the end of the month. And there we go. So, Circle of World Builders, it is a masterclass. And I can give you some more insight now as to what will be happening. Day one is going to be an hour-long masterclass from each of the companies involved in Circle of World Builders, which is World Anvil, Dungeon Fog, Kaora the Mapmaker, and myself. So each of us will be presenting a 1 hour, this is it, this is how we structure and create, etc., etc. And on day two, which is like 15 hours after day one, you then have the opportunity of submitting your own work with the parameters and guidelines that we have prescribed. And then each of us has a 2-hour workshop where we will take those submissions, and depending on how many we get, but we will take those submissions and we will work through them as part of the workshop. In terms of, okay, let's look at this adventure. Okay, this adventure, because this is what I'll be doing, this adventure is really strong here, here, and here. However, I have some questions, and then you'll be able to answer those questions in the chat. And then we look at it and say, well, yes, that's all right, but that requires player knowledge. This requires that. So how do we fix that? Well, we can use this tool. We can use that tool. So it is really a masterclass. So if you have a campaign or if you have a really strong series of adventures and you just want refinement and you want to learn how to use the tools to make it better, then this is going to be for you. I know World Anvil is doing stuff on agile world building, which is a really in-depth, but also really, really effective way of making consistent worlds, legendary weapons and the like. So, I mean, there's just so much opportunity. Anyway, the bottom line is you need to sign up. You need to come here and enter your email address. You need to sign up so that we can get a sense of the numbers of people who will be attending. And so far, if we get 2,000 people attending, and I think we've got 1,000 signed up at the moment, if we get 2,000, Kaora, is going to dye his hair blue. Demetrius from World Anvil is going to shave his head. And I believe it's been voted that I will have to do a few live shows as a certain character's mother in a very, very red wig. So yes, anyway, that's just a bit of fun, but this is going to be the thing to attend if you can. It's at the end of the month. It really is a lot of fun, or hopefully will be a lot of fun, and it's free. So there you go. There you are. Okay. Right, now that brings us to the end of the session. I wish I could have answered more questions. I really, really do. And those videos will, by the way, be available online afterwards. And so if you can't make it, then definitely you can pick them up on our channels. All right. Okay, that's it, folks. I see there's some people already trying to aim for that 2000. Yeah. So we'll see what we get. Anyway, I wish you all the very happiest of gaming. You can catch me live again on Wednesday on this channel, where at 7 p.m. GMT I run the one-on-one game with my player Brian, and then thereafter I do an hour breakdown on how the session went or didn't go, depending on how things go and the planning that goes in behind that. And yes, it should be, it is a lot of fun. It should be a lot of fun for him, because he's going to discover that his character is at the center of a prophecy. Anyway, until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.